All right. No. Anyone else has got a mic that's working?
Hello?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is this working?
All right, this is the way things roll. It's I've just discovered that I'm the moderator for this thing, so I am winging it with one microphone and a bunch of guys I've just met backstage. But we've got some big stuff to talk about. I'm Michael Casey. I'm the Chief Content Officer at CoinDesk. I also happen to have founded a company called Streambed before I joined CoinDesk, which is in the NFT space, looking to sort of develop licensing solutions for it. So I come at this from a couple of different perspectives. Why don't we just go down the line and quickly introduce ourselves, though. Bruce, can you jump in first?
Yep.
Mike's you're good.
I'm Bruce the Goose. I'm a founder of NFT Hub, been a crypto artist since end of 2019. NFT Hub, we focus on like education and aggregation, just trying to make NFTs more accessible. Kind of do a little bit of everything.
Jay?
Hey everybody, Jay Kurahashi-Sofue, VP of Marketing at Ava Labs. We're currently building Avalanche, the smart contracts blockchain. So I think the first focus that we were having in the early times of mainnet launch, which was around September 2020, that's when we were focused on making sure that the platform was feature complete, and then moved on towards growing out the ecosystem, both on DeFi, NFTs, and kind of everything else in between.
Luca, Cosentino, work at Cross River. We are a fintech company, fintech infrastructure company that is helping other fintechs and crypto companies succeed by providing banking, payments, and lending services. We're building an entirely new crypto offering, and we're very excited to be here.
Hey everyone, Muneeb here. I'm the founder of Stacks. Stacks is smart contracts for Bitcoin. And interestingly, recently we've started seeing a bunch of NFT activity through Stacks as well. So there's an interesting historic fact that NFTs started on Bitcoin, and now in some ways they're actually coming back home to Bitcoin through the work that's happening in the Stacks ecosystem.
Right, so there you have a diverse panel of people from different backgrounds. You're all going to have to excuse me for 1 second, because I need to take a photo of something, and I'll explain to you why in a moment here. But I'm going to send it to that person who is not Michael Casey. It's the other Mike Casey. There's a bunch of Michael Caseys in the world. And he's a saxophone player. I actually communicate with him. We know each other because we've got the same name. And he suddenly launched NFTs. And so a warning to you all that as sophisticated as this technology is and advanced as it is, the same old problems of misidentification and everything else continue to abide. So I wasn't aware that he and I were going to be up together. Anyway, that's not me. I wish I could play the saxophone. I can't. He's a very good jazz player as far as I know. Look, I want to just lay out a thesis of mine that I'd like some of these guys to comment on. I see NFTs as the building block for property rights of the digital age. And the reason why that matters, this is a story about our non-fungible future. So what is the big story here? To me, the big story is the idea that capitalism, and in some respects, democracy itself, has moved forward through history when property rights have been established and then turned into something that can be liquidated and traded and turned and monetized, right? There's a guy called Hernando de Soto, who's a brilliant economist from Peru, who wrote a book called The Mystery of Capital, and he lays down this thesis that the difference between successful industrialized nations and the poorer nations of the world comes down to the idea that they don't have mortgages, they don't have property rights, they don't have the capacity to actually take what they own and what they've built and turn it into something valuable. Well, the internet is that problem writ large, right? There was no identification of the assets. We couldn't define digital scarcity, which was you need scarcity, you need the property aspect of a scarce asset to actually define what something is of value that you can turn around. So ultimately, we abrogated all of our control and all of our rights, and the Facebooks and the YouTubes and the Googles basically took over that, and we basically had to give up our rights because we couldn't define the property rights. So now for the very first time, we have a vehicle that attaches to digital output this concept of scarcity. That is the starting point, as far as I'm concerned, for this phenomenal revolution, which is the taking of this powerful idea of property rights and the essential, empowerment of the individual that comes with that, and turning it into the digital sphere. So that's the little sort of big idea I want to throw out there. Muneeb, I want to throw to you because you've been in this space for a long time and you've been thinking about the broad economic implications of crypto and blockchain generally. What do you see from, you can run with that or run with something else if you like, but as the big sort of story here behind NFTs?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I completely agree with you. I think that's the property rights thing is the fundamental thing here. And this goes back to like humans as a civilization. Even when people used to live in tribes, they would actually figure out trade organically. Like they would figure out like something through which they could do trade, or they would evolve certain type of currencies. Like instead of doing barter, they would somehow evolve like, okay, this, like, that's how gold started getting used and so on. But they will also figure out property rights like organically. But those are pretty like fundamental foundational things. And historically, whenever you look at any region and at the point in time when they figured out property rights, you would actually notice that, the wealth of that community or that nation actually starts to rise pretty dramatically as soon as they figure that out. And you can actually go to certain places, like I was born in Pakistan. There are certain areas in Pakistan even right now where the local farmers, they don't have property rights, right? So they're living under a feudal type of a system, and it's not very good for the like basically optimizing for the benefits of the society. That's not a very good structure. And I think you can actually draw an analogy of a small village in Pakistan that is living under a feudal type of a system to what's happening on the internet right now, right? Where the Facebooks of the world, they basically extract all the value, whereas it's the people and it's your work and your data and your kind of like contributions, and you're not getting anything out of it, right? Like other than basically like sitting there and seeing ads. And it's connecting these dots to the revolution of really like started with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is digital scarcity expressed for money, right? So it's a currency, but it's really digital scarcity and it's a fungible thing. So the name like NFT, non-fungible token, like goes all the way back to the fact that Bitcoin was fungible. And then when people started thinking about like non-fungible assets, that's an entire class of applications, right? So this is, I think, we are only at the beginning, and maybe I'll comment a little bit later on about the timing of this. I think the timing of this is also pretty interesting that it's happening this year, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that you brought that back to Bitcoin, because regardless of whether or not we're talking about a non-fungible expression of it, it is exactly that point, that there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoins, and that is such a profound idea. Like, you could just replicate and copy anything before Bitcoin came along. There was no way to actually define that individual unique item, and now you have it, right? So Bruce, I thought I'd go to you because like we're talking about the people who are disempowered, who don't have this, and you're an artist, right? I mean, that's really, you're a creator. That is, I think, the defining aspect of this age, where we're all creators in some respects. Some of us are better and more successful, perhaps like yourself, but you're all, how does this technology help you to assert your rights in this, in this sort of post-NFT age?
I'm not a physical artist. Like, I can't draw worth a damn. So, like, as a digital artist, like, people get paid like pennies on the dollar for what they're actually worth. Like working for big corporations, doing animation, stuff like that. Whereas blockchain lets you just tokenize it, and it's like, this is my art. Like, it's authentic. It's a one of one. Like, it's revolutionary for art. It's revolutionary for gaming. Like, it's still hard to wrap my head around it. I've been doing it for 2 years full time, but like, it's really incredible. Like, I've brought a few other artists into it, and like, they've been somewhat successful at least, and like, but like a lot of them recognize the value of like, this is like, it's going to change like everything.
Cool. But I mean, to get there, Jay, it's, as I said, I see NFTs as this building block, but like, we still have to figure out all of this sort of accessibility. There's user interface problems. There's the back end stuff. What's Avalanche doing to try to build a lot of those pieces?
Yeah, sure. So we were talking about this a little bit in the back, but with UX, I think everyone has to evaluate and understand the implications all the way from the ground up. What I mean by that is at the protocol level, what does it mean to actually implement some of this technology? Do you have everything that's accounted for? Does everyone at the top also understand those implications? Specifically speaking, the one example I gave in the back as well was, if you think about NFTs and file hosting. And if you have decentralized systems like protocols like Avalanche that host these NFTs and actually enable people to mint them, well, then shouldn't it also mean that the infrastructure is also decentralized? So one anecdote that I tend to bring up often is I work with advertising agencies very often because a lot of these bigger players are saying, okay, well, how can we engage with the customer? What can we do to have that extra touch point? And NFTs seems to be one of the hottest items, I guess, in the meeting room. The unfortunate part is what I hear often is they'll be like, all right, well, we'll go to, let's say, like a marketplace. We'll mint an NFT and we'll quickly upload the images all across our centralized servers. Well, one of the obvious issues, if you've been in the space for a while, is you're going to have this issue where once the AWS bill or whatever bill is up, then you're going to have a lot of 404 images. And so that's where, when I speak with people who may not be from the Web3 background or crypto initiated, if you will, then I say, all right, well, make sure that you really understand the UX implications. And even beyond kind of the technical portions before minting, what is the user experience like from the end user? When someone comes to a marketplace, are they able to transact with ACH, debit, credit? Or do they have to go to a centralized exchange, get the native asset transferred to MetaMask? We all know that flow. A lot of us obviously put up with it, but most people won't. And so I think, ultimately speaking, UX is always something that I'll keep harping until people really understand how best to streamline that journey.
Cool, and Luca, you've got a perch, I think, is able to look at how the different pieces of this are evolving. I mean, are we going to get there? I mean, what does the world look like from now? It's all very chaotic, and it's early adopters, and it's got a lot of complex, clunky stuff going on. When and how do we get to a point where this stuff is mainstream?
So the very first time I touched DeFi in my life, it was $500 million in value locked. So it was like decently long ago, and at that time it was very complicated to move stuff around, even to understand how the next generation of these DeFi protocols would actually evolve. And now we are all talking about representing intangible value via an NFT. I would say tangible and intangible value via an NFT, taking that NFT and slowly recognizing that as more valuable than what it was a year ago and more widely acceptable and valuable than what it was maybe just 3 months ago. And so every 3 months there is sort of an innovation or a new way to value something that only a year or 2 years ago had zero value whatsoever and zero ways to actually price and assign whatever, again, value that unit of accounting, I'd say, had. Now back to your question, what's going to happen next? My thesis for the future of crypto in the next few years is that there's going to be two parallel routes that are going to happen at the same time. The first one is purely decentralized world where there is no concept of fiat, there's no concept of regulation or anything whatsoever. And then there's the other parallel trajectory, which is actually going to say almost the opposite, and is going to take crypto, get the best of crypto, get whatever is possible to build with crypto, and then take it to a regulated, safer, user-friendly space, which is fintech. So I'm under the strong conviction that these two trends, even though opposite to each other, they will actually coexist for some time and bring crypto to the next billion users. At Cross River, which is where I work for, again, we're building a crypto team with the idea of supporting what has just been said, like ACH, payments, like making the experience of the normal user who doesn't want to take any significant risk or doesn't want to be bothered by handling very complicated pieces to access new products. And we're going to make it easier for them. Not directly, but by enabling partners such as, for instance, Ava could be a great partner for that. And we're going to help their users succeed. And yeah, this is the core mission of Cross River now. It exemplifies this vision of the future of crypto. And the next natural step will be taking this unit of value called NFTs, pricing them properly, understanding what they represent, and then acknowledge their value and lend against them or give something in exchange to them. And this is very innovative because for the first time we're seeing that something that wasn't really transferable or representable beyond the geography or beyond the walls where that was issued, actually being assigned something tangible and accessible to many. And I think that is answering your question. I think this is what the future is going to look like for the next 2 to 5 years.
Right, so we're moving to this phase where it's this assignment of value to sort of like, the capacity to actually discover prices and put sort of something very meaningful around all these different pieces. Muneeb, like, why does this matter now? Like you were saying that there's this sort of pivotal time right now that I think is important. But yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that the idea for NFTs has been around for a while, right? I think the first popular one was probably like Rare Pepe in 2015, 16 timeframe or so on, which was actually like built on Bitcoin. The idea was there. I think people were working in it. Even on Ethereum, I think Ethereum really popularized the idea. Like a lot more people got exposed to it. But even if you look at companies like OpenSea, like for the longest time, like they started working on it probably like 3 years ago. For the longest time, like they believed in it, but nobody was really using these things at a massive scale. And something changed this year. And I actually think that part of it was that the crypto infrastructure was getting tried and tested and was getting more mature because of other use cases. Like last year, it was like decentralized finance. And do think that when the rubber was hitting the road and a lot of the kinks and the underlying issues were actually getting ironed out, and a bunch of capital was moving in, right? So if you trace the capital, once the capital is there, and these ideas that are very powerful but haven't been fully discovered yet, right? So and as they get discovered, and then boom, COVID hit, and I think that was very much like a pivotal moment, because at an individual level, a lot of people had that realization that, oh, I could actually just work from anywhere, or life is not going back to the way it was supposed to be. So it's like almost like a shock to the system. And when the shock hit, people are realizing that the world has actually changed drastically from what it used to be. And I think your digital lives might actually be more important than your physical surroundings. Right, so I could move to a remote location, and nobody really knows that I work in crypto. I would prefer that. I'm a very private person. But online, you could have your real name or a pseudonymous name, and you could even have your assets online, right? And at some point, a lot of people in crypto are like that their crypto assets are probably worth more than their physical world assets, right? Like there's some amount of Bitcoin that I have, which it has gone through a one-way street. I don't think it's ever coming back. Like I'm probably never going to sell that Bitcoin. I might use it in the digital world. I might convert it into, I might buy NFTs. I might buy other types of assets that, I'm interested in, or I want to play around with them. But I don't think I'll ever convert it back to anything that is an asset in the real world, right? So once you start thinking like that, and you start thinking that this is almost like evolution, right? Like we as humans have had these big moments like over the last like thousands of years when we discover something really big, and it actually just changes who you are as civilization. And I think this idea might be one of those things where it really kickstarts a true digital economy, and that economy might actually become bigger than what we're used to like before this happened.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea, the idea that there's an entirely different realm, and there's different pieces to it, right? So there's the NFT as a property right, as a representation of a unique value in the digital form, but then there's the payments vehicle. And so the idea that we have these digital assets that we already have, and it doesn't actually leave that digital realm. It's it's a lived experience in that digital context. So Jay, I mean, again, we're getting back to this idea of the pieces. How does DeFi Bitcoin as the early kind of like core, kind of almost collateral of this internet of value in a way, and then NFTs come together in a holistic sense.
Well, I think building off of what Muneeb was talking about, right now, a lot of projects and individuals, they're preparing for the next phase of NFTs. NFTs right now have proven exactly what Muneeb was talking about. In this world that we live in, perhaps the digital world is much more valuable to some people than the physical world. Now, I think one low-hanging fruit in terms of adding utility to NFTs is really merging the two, DeFi and NFT, to say okay, well maybe if you wanted to take out a loan in stablecoins, you can put up your NFTs for collateral. Who's to say that you can't do that? And I know there's a project called NFT Lend, I believe, that's trying to achieve that. And I think that can keep going on, especially following the same path that DeFi did, where you have all these primitives. You have lending, derivatives, all these different use cases beyond just traditional swaps. So with NFTs, you can do the same thing. And I think once people really figure that out, then there's going to be a kind of another layer of utility added onto this sector that we call, I guess, collectibles or kind of the decentralized JPEGs.
We've got a minute and a half left. Luca, you got any thoughts on that? You know, these different pieces?
Yeah, first of all, I don't fully buy the argument of fungibility versus non-fungibility of the tokens. That's a separate topic, but to me, it's just representing value. Like the dollars, the actual paper has a tag on it. So it's not true that $1 is the same as $2. Like those are different. Like we decided not to care about that. And why shouldn't be the same in maybe like NFTs or other assets? So what is the long story short? The long story short is, again, back to my previous point, is like the value we decide to assign to a certain unit. What NFTs are bringing now is the possibility to represent that value in something that you put, you run by the computer, and the computer is going to tell you exactly what it is, the information that is attached to that, what it represents, where it comes from, the history, and blah, blah, blah. And this is what, at some point, will allow the actual connection between a unit of exchange to a value. That's why you can build primitives on top of. That's why you can use these new primitives to then do much broader scope or achieve much broader goals. I think lending is going to be the biggest one, both centralized and decentralized. There's going to be ways to do it in both ways, and I think I'm very excited again for this ability to take value that is tangible and intangible and do broader things with that.
Bruce, why don't you we just passed time right now, but why don't you just give us the quick last wrap on what you see as the opportunities for artists like you? Where does it go from here, very quickly?
Yeah, I think it goes way beyond art. Like, I think we've barely scratched the surface of what we can do with this tech, and like, it could disrupt every industry on the planet for the most part. Like, supply chain, medical records, user property, like pretty much anything that's non-perishable could be tokenized as an NFT.
Yep, property rights. That's where it goes. Okay, thanks for wrapping that up. Thanks, everybody.